You're listening to the We Are Libertarians Podcast Network. Find all of our shows at wearelibertarians.com. You're listening to the We Are Libertarians Network. Learn more at wearelibertarians.com.
Welcome to the Boss Hog of Liberty podcast on East Central Indiana's favorite podcast network, We Are Libertarians. Is that the way we start this? This is episode number 166 of the Boss Hog of Liberty. I'm joined today by fill-in co-host, or maybe real co-host, I don't know. Sean Rouse here, Zach Burcham is here, and of course, Dakota Davis. Now, Zach is here and Dakota is here. Is this awkward? Mm-hmm. Are we okay?
This is a little uncomfortable. Don't know if I should be sitting in this seat or not. Today's episode features the four of us. We're going to be talking about all sorts of things, but really, Jeremiah just wanted a racing show so bad that he just was feeling the withdrawals and the discomfort from not having one in May, that we will be talking about NASCAR today. We're going to be talking about Bubba Wallace and kind of everything that goes into that story. We have a fact sheet that Patreon members get, and there's all the facts in that story, everything that you want to know, everything that you need to know that the memes on Facebook do not tell you. We're going to talk about that. And then we also have our in-house philosopher / defense attorney, Sean Rao, who's going to be helping, just keep things rolling. He's going to help us realize whenever we've done something that's just intellectually incorrect and correct us as we go along.
We really ought to give Sean the ability to mute any of us so that if we get into territory that's not helpful for our futures, that he can save us from ourselves.
The ESPN around the horn button. It just slaps it.
We'll get you the app on your phone.
I don't think we have any of those words. I think that all of us are on the right side of history with this moment.
Yeah.
Let's hope.
Man, I think I'm on the right side. This show is about our lives in rural Indiana. We're here to push your boundaries and make you think as individuals. Sometimes we'll provoke you. Other times we'll make you laugh. But hopefully you'll always learn something new.
That's right. And before we get into the show, we have the people over at patreon.com/bosshogofliberty. That is where you can go to support the show every month. That's really what pays the bills around this place. It keeps the lights on, keeps the air conditioning on whenever we need it. It also keeps the internet rolling and up to date, and provided by the good folks at Metronet. And then there's every possible tier that you could imagine on Patreon. We encourage a donation at $5 or more a month. But if you donate at $50 or more a month, then you get a shout out at the front of every episode. Those folks are Chris Lamb, Christy Avery, Jonathan Phillips, and our good friend from Hawaii, Mr. Craig DaCosta. We also have our T-Chip stores. That's where you can get your merchandise. tchip.com/BHOL1, BHOL2, BHOL3. We usually post those links in the live chat, but we don't have a producer today to do that. So who knows if that's going to happen? What a jerk, leaving us stranded like that.
Yeah, it's completely his fault that we're recording.
He's in the chat.
On this
he
night
should do
anyway.
it in the chat.
Yeah, he's got nothing else going on. Honestly, you're exactly right.
He could do it from wherever he is.
You are exactly
remotely,
right. For sure.
And so we are also actively looking for advertisers.
We're ready to negotiate.
We are. We have a really nice sheet that has all of our metrics on it, from our Facebook page to how many downloads we get per episode. So if you've been listening to this podcast and you're like, I wonder how big this podcast really is, all you have to do is just pay us, and you get that information.
Find out. Pay us to find out.
Pay us and we'll let you see it. Hody Johns is in the chat from the We're Libertarians Network. I listen to Hody, by the way. If you go back and listen to the main We're Libertarians feed, Hody is one of the hosts over there, and he had a video of basically essentially driving while black and summarizing a few different video interactions, and he broke through it. Excellent shout out for Hody over there. It's very worth your time. I was trying to make dinner when my wife was working late the other night, and Hody kept me company, whether he knew it or not. All right. I've been trying to avoid this topic. I really have. In the last month, we've been trying to have fun episodes, fun shows ever since the George Floyd incident happened. And then it's like society has just cracked me in the face over and over again saying, no, you really do need to get into this one. And in the last week and a half, it's hit the other side of my world, not the politics side, but the racing side. And I know Zach's going to be helpful with this conversation, and Dakota is going to nod and shake his head and say, yeah, I think I understand. But honestly, I think that you guys are both going to be, both Sean and Dakota, not having a racing brain, but a pop culture and understanding the world we're in today. I think we're going to be able to bring a unique view into this conversation, both from, hey, here's the way the racing world works, and in the, hey, here's how politics looks today. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So Bubba Wallace is a 20-something NASCAR Cup driver. It's the very top, highest level of NASCAR. He's been a Drive for Diversity graduate, essentially. So for about the last 15 years, or 10 to 15 years, he's been racing, and he's been coming up the ladder series. And NASCAR has invested, I would say, Zach, in the last 12 years into trying, maybe even the last 15, 20 years, trying to make sure that there's diversity in their drivers.
Yeah.
You see it. Bubba Wallace has made it to the very top. Eric Almirola, who drove the 43 car before Bubba, is Cuban, of Cuban descent. There's a recently departed, but a half Japanese driver was in the series. Daniel Suarez is a Mexican driver. You've seen folks from outside of the country. Juan Montoya, obviously a Colombian, has been in the NASCAR world. I don't know if Australians count as diverse or not, but Marcus Ambrose has been in the NASCAR series. So it's not just an American racing series. The series, the racing style that Zach and I are most passionate about is IndyCar racing and open wheel. And that is, the Americans are almost a minority in that world. They're lucky to have 10 American drivers on the grid full time in that series. So Bubba is a graduate of the diversity program. He's had moderate success. He's definitely not the top end, highest level guy. He's not winning every race. In fact, he hasn't won a Cup Series race yet, but he's been, I would say, a competent driver in the series. I pulled his stats today to try to figure out how he did. There's basically 3 levels of top level NASCAR. There's a Truck Series, which is like AA ball. There's the Xfinity Series, which is basically the AAA, one step below the majors. And then there's the Cup Series, which is the absolute highest level. He won 6 races in the Truck Series. He's had 35 top 10s in the Xfinity Series, and he's had 6 top 10s in about just over 2 years of racing in the Cup Series. Do 36 races a year, about 3 or maybe 10% of the time he's in the top 10 of a field. So he's not killing it, but he's also not in one of the best cars, right?
Yeah.
And I really appreciate all the extra words you're using, Zach. This is very helpful.
Trying.
This is very helpful.
You're covering it so well.
This is the racing portion of it. You gotta.
Yes, I'm trying
You
to lay
guys
the
gotta
groundwork.
carry us through here.
I'm trying to lay the groundwork so that you guys have some background just to understand where we're coming from. And then in the last 10 or 15 minutes of the show, after I'm done talking about the racing, we'll get into the rest of it. And he doesn't completely suck though, right? Like he finished in 2018, he finished second in the biggest race of the year for them, the Daytona 500. So that's the Super Bowl of stock car racing. He finished second in 2018. Can be kind of a fluky race. That's the 2 super speedways are the places where you don't have to have the best car. You have to have some skill and some luck and some talent. All of the things have to come together, and you have to usually avoid a big wreck or two to do well. But he's done okay. So right now he's 21st in points. There's like 40 cars that start every race. He's literally like the median, right at the midpoint. So that kind of sets the stage for where he is. You may have heard his name in this COVID world when all sports stopped. He was the guy who got in trouble first in esports. He rage quit, Dakota. He was the guy we talked about on the show where there was a driver whose sponsor said, the hell with this, we're not paying for you anymore. And the Petty Motorsports team basically lost a sponsor because he was like, this is stupid. I'm not doing this anymore. He got pissed off at what somebody else did on the track, and he turned it off, sent out an angry tweet, and he was done. So he's a fiery competitor.
He got wrecked twice in I think a few minutes and was like, I'm over this. And
Yeah.
left.
And then the next day he caught a lot of flack for saying, this is just a game. Come on, guys. This is just a game. I can't, it's like the Allen Iverson practice. Like this, you're talking about practice, right? That's all this is. You're wasting
Talking
our
about
time.
esports,
We're talking about esports. Yeah. This means nothing.
which is all we
It's in
have
the
right
game.
now, though.
Yeah. And it was a big deal. It was on national TV. There was, but I also understand we have all got pissed off and thrown the remote, thrown the controller and turned off the Xbox and been done. I get it. I do understand that one. He's sponsored by Coca-Cola. He's in the Coca-Cola family of drivers. So if you watched the race this last week, the in-car camera, it's Coca-Cola everywhere, right? So he's got some big money sponsorship as well. But it's also a somewhat underfunded team. You also notice that the car had the Victory Junction Gang Camp, the family charity essentially was on the side of the car, which tells me that they didn't really have sponsorship for the quarter panels, not the side pods, Zach, but the quarter panels on the 43 Chevy. He also got in some trouble last year, a little bit of a fight. This is not out of the ordinary for any race car driver at all. But he got into a bit of a scuffle with a guy named Alex Bowman at Charlotte last year, went over to his car, and I think he sprayed some water in the guy's face, which once again, Zach, that's Danica Patrick Milcaduno stuff right there, right?
That's NASCAR.
We've seen it. So you've seen Lake Speed was in Newcastle this last weekend, by the way. Really? I got a Lake Speed sighting at the go-kart track. And Lake Speed is a guy that took a punch in the face while he's still strapped in his car from Michael Waltrip. So these things happen in NASCAR. So that's Bubba Wallace.
It's a safe time to punch somebody, though.
Yeah, when he's still stuck in his car, and it was back in the day before they had the closed helmet, so he would have been sitting there open faced and ready to sock in the nose, and the guy can't get back out and get you. I think he got fined for that. So Bubba has tried. And he's 20. I don't know. We'll have to look it up. I think he's 25. I would say he's 25, 26. So he's just a touch older than you, Dakota. And he's a race car driver. And the view that I've had is that he's 26 years old, born October 3rd, 1993. He just wants to race, right? He doesn't want to be the poster child, the Jackie Robinson of this. He's not the first black NASCAR driver. They go back generations. There was Bill Lester raced 15 years ago in the Cup Series, not full time, but he was there. He
wants to get to where he's at on the results.
Right. He wants to just be another racer. So I think he has intentionally tried not to identify as, hey, I'm the black guy. He's been, hey, I'm a race car driver who's also black. That's the mentality that I've had. I've never looked at Bubba Wallace and said, oh, hey, there's the black guy. I said, oh, that's the guy that's driving the 43 car. He replaced Eric Almirola, and he's, competent. Doesn't suck, but he's also not there just because he's bringing a check from so-and-so. He's actually a paid driver, which some guys aren't, right?
Very rare.
That's not the way that always works. But in the last month, he has become a target of conversation. And when the Black Lives Matter stuff came back up after George Floyd, he started wearing the shirt. So like he wore the shirt saying, no, I recognize that people are paying attention to me. I have a platform and I have a duty to do this.
He was even being asked.
Yeah.
He was because he's the one guy in the paddock. He had other drivers and people coming to him and asking him,
how should I respond?
How should I respond? Like, what can I do? Things like that. And so all of a sudden he realizes, he's like, oh, maybe I should actually like say something because I'm the guy that people are looking to for that kind of information and perspective.
And as I'm looking at, I always try to look at things the way I would see them. And obviously I have a very different experience, but I also know that if I was asked to be the official spokesperson of anything in any group of people, I'd be like, I do not want that job. Right. Like it's not fair to ask anybody to do that, because as soon as you start to speak, Sean, as soon as you start to speak for all defense attorneys, you're going to start to hear that all defense attorneys don't believe.
I don't do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. All right.
Exactly. Or Dakota, if you're talking on behalf of all heroes out there, that keep the lights on in the summertime, they're going to be varied opinions.
Yes.
So he never
do that.
He was a hesitant spokesperson to start with. There's been a conversation in NASCAR. It's obviously a sport that started in the Southeast, and a lot of Southeastern history has been tied to it because the same people that would go to the races also had other things going on in their world.
Well,
So
didn't
it would not-
NASCAR really get started because they were like, I guess not NASCAR, but making cars go as fast as possible started because of booze running?
Yeah, they were moonshiners.
Yeah, in the South.
In the Southeast, yeah. You're taking, you would have a still somewhere in Appalachia and you were trying to get it to market. That was the
most
whole
of
thing.
like the founders of NASCAR spent some time in prison for that.
Jail. Well, maybe not prison. Jail.
But yeah, they spent some.
Junior Johnson wing of the county jail. Aaron Dakota's disappearing. So Lewis Orcutt's in the chat and he says, "I listen to Bubba when he can drive a winner circle in NASCAR race." We covered that, Lewis. Bubba's won 6 times in the truck series, which is 6 more than me.
It's more than everybody in this room combined.
We spent the first 10 minutes recognizing that Bubba deserves to be on the track. He's a very competent and very accomplished racer to get to this point. So we've got that out of the way. We're going to have a conversation now about about overlaying this sport of motorsports into the political climate of what we have now. So NASCAR's had a history of, and it's the same thing you would have seen when Jeanine Lee Lake was running for Congress 2 years ago. There was a big story that came out about the Confederate flags that were being sold at the Moreland Fair. Well, the guy that sells the flags at the Moreland Fair probably sold them to some NASCAR fans as well, because you would see on occasion at the tailgate or in the camping area somebody running their, is it Stars and Bars? Is that what they call it?
Yeah.
Yep. That you see that flag there along with their Saturdays are for the boys and their American flag, the whole thing. NASCAR made a decision to say that in the areas we control, no more Confederate flags, right? So that happened June 13th. We are June 24th. That was 11 days ago. This has been the fastest changing story. I had a show in my mind yesterday as to where that was going to be.
It blew up in the middle of the afternoon.
And then yesterday by sunset, I'm like, well, damn it. I guess we got to update this again. So, that's why show notes didn't come out to the last possible second too. NASCAR said no more Confederate flags at the racetrack. The next race, granted, all of this is happening in COVID too, right? Mm-hmm. So there's really not any fans. There were going to be like 5,000 fans at the NASCAR race in Talladega. There was no camping. The drivers, the series, they are literally flying in that day, no practice, show up, run the car, leave. That's the way it's been working for the last month or so in the NASCAR world.
I even heard that they don't even go into the garage area. They're like in their bus and they're told, okay, time.
Yeah.
Leave their bus, walk to the car, which is on the pit lane, and get in the car and race.
So it is not the usual experience of when Zach and I have been to races in the past. It's not the 2 or 3 days. Yeah. Everybody's out there tailgating. We're not there yet as in the motorsports world. We're getting there, but we're not there yet. To get their message across, somebody hired a plane, Dakota, and they had them fly a banner, and it was the Confederate flag. So which immediately made the news, right? So there's an ESPN story, June 21st, which is Sunday, the day of the race, Confederate flag. So that now we are into don't have the Confederate flag. Now we're racially tinged of, oh my God, somebody's protesting us by flying this flag. So everybody is on DEFCON 10.
Does anyone know why the Confederate flag is such a big deal?
That's a great question. I wish I could answer that for the people. And there's also, I think there was a vendor across the street who was saying like record sales. I don't know who he was selling them to because there weren't many fans there, but he was like, I'm selling more than I've. And NASCAR had actually come out. They started asking fans to please leave them at home 5 years ago after the Charleston shooting. They said, because they're trying to separate themselves. And they're like, they just said, you guys please leave them home. But they said, we aren't going to ban them. We're not going to enforce anything. And then they kind of took this opportunity. And I think they waited. Somebody asked Bubba Wallace, they said, does this bug you? Do you think? And he's like, yeah, they shouldn't be around. They should ban them. And NASCAR, I don't think it was an hour after that.
They said, yep, you got it.
Yeah, done. And it was social media just lit up on fire.
I just don't understand it. I don't get it at all.
I don't either. Because when you try to ask somebody to defend it, you get kind of the same answers, but it's never really, they try to
say you always hear the heritage, not hate. It's like, yeah, but your heritage were people that fought for basically everything that goes against what this country stands for. The fact that all men are created equal.
So
on behalf of a country that existed for like 5 years, like 160 years ago.
Yeah.
That nobody you've ever
that didn't
met
that didn't win.
They lost.
But it is also I will say for context, this is not support in any way, but it occurred to me that the Confederate flag is also still in some state flags, right? Mississippi has that in their flags.
Yeah.
Still.
Have you? I think they're still the only state that does it, because the state of Georgia,
They got rid of it in 2003.
Yeah, but did they really?
I don't know.
Have you seen?
To be honest, I've been to Georgia like 4 times in my life, and I've never really cared about their state flag.
Do something real quick for me and look up Georgia state flag, Confederate flag. Just those words. So, okay, yeah, you're looking at the flag of Georgia, which is
This is what they adopted in 2003.
It looks similar to a Betsy Ross flag, where it's got the 13 stars in a circle. There's an emblem representing the state of Georgia inside of those stars, and then there are the 3 very wide red and white stripes.
Sure.
So if you look at that, and then you look up the real Confederate flag, the official flag of the Confederacy, because the one that we're talking about, the stars and bars, which is just a battle flag for the Confederacy, it's the exact same flag.
I do see the resemblance there. This looks a lot like.
Yeah. So
this looks a lot like Under Pressure versus Ice Ice Baby.
Yeah,
it's a heavy sampling.
It's the exact same flag. With it, just the only difference is that the state of Georgia added the Georgia state seal inside of the stars on the flag. That's the only difference. So did they really get rid of the Confederate flag? No.
Yeah.
Hard no from me on that one.
In their defense, and I will just for fun, and this is where we'll go off the trails. Off the rail. Their original state flag also was very similar. It was
they were part of the Confederacy too.
Well, yeah, but they were Georgia before they were the Confederacy. Yeah. So it's not the stars and bars. I can tell you that if I showed that picture of the current Georgia flag to 100 people, maybe 2 of them would say, "Oh yeah, there's a problem there." Unless you walk them down the rabbit hole.
Unless you're a student of history.
Well, that's
like
why there's the 2 people.
You might be able to show it to 100 people who have Confederate flags, and they couldn't.
And they'd be like,
well,
that's boring.
Correct.
Well, that's the other thing you see on social media a lot. I see the people making posts that say, this flag isn't even the real flag of the Confederacy.
I saw
this is just a battle
flag.
flag.
They gave some timeline. It said it wasn't even really in use for most of the Civil War. It like came in
and you're
the
like,
end or something.
Then why does it matter to you so much?
Right.
Yeah.
The fact that you care
because
so
it's prohibited.
badly about saving the flag of traitors that betrayed everything that our nation stood for, and these are men that fought for the right to own people as property. How do you stand beside that and go, no, I still want to have that flag. I want to be proud of that part of my family's history.
Well, there's all this.
What is wrong with you?
There's all this Southern history that, as 4 Northerners up here, we didn't grow up with
It's
or
true.
understand. So it's really hard for us to put in the context. What I always get confused by are the people in Indiana and Michigan and Wisconsin. They're flying the Confederate flag. It's like, dude, we were on the other side.
Yeah,
man.
it
Like,
was,
you're rooting for the away team here.
Hey,
What's going
hey
on?
buddy, we killed them.
That'd be like flying the ISIS flag, buddy.
Yeah.
There's one flying like a block from here on this road.
Yeah.
The road the studio's on, there's one flying.
Yes.
It's like, I'm always like, where? I mean, but we're in Kentucky.
Well, but Kentucky was in the Union too.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
I know families split either way, but officially Kentucky was in the Union.
Yeah,
You got to get down to Tennessee.
It's always been weird to me. And to Sean's point, that's why I started the conversation by going, why?
Yeah.
Why is it important? I genuinely don't get it. Like it doesn't make sense to me to be so defensive about it. Like the monuments, I don't understand why that's such a big deal. I just don't understand why you would have why you would want to honor people that wanted to own people.
And you can have monuments in a history museum.
Yeah.
That's questionable now too.
I think
that's also been a problem in the last week.
You have the Teddy Roosevelt monument where he's like, I'm the white man, and here's the Indian, and here's the black guy.
Yeah.
I'm gonna
that one's weird too.
So it's a weird statue too.
It looks kind of.
As a historical piece, that's where those things belong. They don't belong in. There shouldn't be a Confederate monument in Indianapolis, Indiana. Like that just doesn't make any sense.
No.
It was so I looked into that one too. So Pothole Joe, Mayor Joe Hogsett in Indianapolis, friend of the family. Hello, Joe. Rushville, Indiana, by the way, a proud lion, I'm sure. There's a monument in Garfield Park,
right? That's the one I was referencing.
Correct. Originally, it was there because it was a burial site, and they actually had folks interred there. They then removed those individuals and moved them to to Crown Hill.
Yeah,
and then the monument was still there.
And that's fine, but we don't need the monument there.
Yeah.
I mean, you can have the sites identifying the deceased without having the monument there.
It's just part of how we got here. Because the same thing. You're like, how in the hell is that in Indianapolis, Indiana?
I had this conversation with my dad talking about that. And we were just having a genuine conversation, because I think before the news broke that was getting removed, neither one of us even realized that it was there.
Yeah.
I remember the story probably 7, 8, 9 years ago that it was there, and then it fizzled out. In doing just cursory reading of, hey, I clicked on the article to understand. I also saw that the monument was erected in the 1920s when the Klan ran with most of the state and the municipal governments.
As most of those Confederate statues were during Jim Crow and during the 20s and 30s.
They were symbols of.
They weren't erected right after the Civil War to be like, oh yeah, you remember General Lee? He fought for us 2 years ago. What a great guy he is. He's still over here. It was to put black people in their place.
Somebody.
It was like a reminder, and then like a trolling of the North. Like we didn't say you can't put anything up to remind. So they was like, we'll just keep doing this, and it was a reminder. It's bizarre to even hear people defend, and like the monument in Garfield Park, it wasn't, but like actual statues of actual Confederate leaders. I was like, that's just
bizarre. It was supposed to be like a memorial headstone because all of those prisoners of war, apparently all of their bodies got exhumed and moved a couple of times, and bones got all mixed matched and stuff. And
I will say the chat is busy right now with folks that are saying, hey, the Confederate flag has been a symbol of being a rebel or freedom from tyranny, essentially. That's what's being offered up. That said, it was for the army that lost,
for armed insurrection against the United States government. I mean, let's just call it what it is.
No, Abe Lincoln is a war criminal. We should know that he was horribly unconstitutional and a war criminal in many ways.
And the tyranny of telling you that you can't own other people.
What is the worst?
And treat them like below.
What's the worst tyranny? Tyranny from a government telling you can't own people, or being owned by a person?
Yeah, who treats you like property and not like a human being.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have successfully solved that issue in American history.
For a large amount of the population, the Confederate flag itself is a symbol of tyranny. Mm-hmm. That's how it is.
Well, how would you feel like if you're an African American looking at that? I mean, just in general, it's like these people fought to keep people like me as a slave.
In my sociology class at Ivy Tech, the prestigious school,
I'm a proud graduate. I will never.
It's Ivy.
Yeah,
it's Ivy. It is the Ivy League of Muncie.
Yes.
It's not the Harvard of Muncie, but it is in the Ivy League.
I remember my professor was talking about like cultural institutions and different things, and they specifically showed pictures in this section of our textbook for some reason of black people wearing Confederate flag as articles of clothing. And I forget what the context of that was. Oh, I remember now, is that it was there were some people that took it as a strike against the Confederacy, like it kind of like how some women will call each other slut and things. Like
they're taking it. And
to be more
taking control of the context and the meaning
exactly, and doing those sorts of things. And then he said that he had a good friend in college who is an African American man who wore a giant rebel flag belt buckle, and whenever people would ask him about it, he would just say, "Because he was a rebel, man." So
I understand people have their own opinion. They can choose to have the flag if they want to. NASCAR is a private organization. When they rent a track, they control it, they own it, they decide it, and they say, "Hey, we're not going to have that here." Right? If you're going to be on the grounds, you are in agreement to these are the rules we're going to play by if you're going to be here. So you're not going to display that fabric at this facility. It's a private group at that point, and they have it. Mm-hmm. That is a decision that they're making, and it's in their self-interest to do that because they have Bush, they have Xfinity, they have Progressive, or whoever is sponsoring them, paying the bills, wants to have an image that is acceptable to the majority of the American public. So it's in their interest. You don't see that the Confederate flag is at a Georgia football game, right? You're not necessarily flying it there. You're not flying it at an Alabama football game.
You don't. It's SEC country, but you don't necessarily. I've never been to an SEC game, a football game down there, but I've never been aware of any Confederate flags being flown down there. I
think the SEC came out in the last week with a statement and said that they're not going to host any tournaments or anything
in Mississippi
until they get the Confederate flag out of their state flag. They're like, until you fix that, you're not going to be hosting any events for us. So, and that gets things moving. Like even for NASCAR, it might not be as much of a moral decision as it's a business decision. Yeah. They want to be welcoming. They want to. They're losing fans like a lot of sports are, and they're trying to get them bring in new fans. And you can't have people flying things that make other people uncomfortable.
So
whatever that would be.
We've set the tone of hypersensitivity, right? That was June 21st, last Sunday in Talladega, Alabama. They said no flag. Somebody pays for a plane to fly the flag. So now NASCAR, the teams, everybody, probably especially Bubba Wallace's team, is on edge. It's COVID time. So there are maybe 20 people that travel with the team. That is it. There's hardly anybody on the grounds of the track. Bubba has flown in and he is in his motorhome waiting to be called to his car. That's it. These guys don't have a trailer they go to get dressed or anything. They've got a suitcase. They go change in the car, or they change in their camper, and then they walk out to the car, or they get in and they race. That's it. So Bubba Wallace has not been in his garage area. He hasn't worked on his car. He hasn't seen his car since it sat in Charlotte, North Carolina, most likely. And he probably didn't even see it there, honestly, because of COVID, because they're not really allowed to do that. His team alerts NASCAR, or NASCAR figures out, hey, we believe that there is a noose in Bubba Wallace's garage.
Poorly, one of his crew members saw it and notified the crew chief, and the crew chief went to NASCAR and said, "This is in the garage stall." And
so it was the crew chief.
Yeah, well, it was somebody in the crew notified the crew chief, who then went to NASCAR, and they're like, "Okay, we need to look into this." And at some point in there, the statement came out of what had been found.
So NASCAR extremely aggressively runs out and says, absolutely not. Whoever did this, lifetime ban. Steve Phelps, who is the, I don't know if he's the president of NASCAR now or if he's the executive. He's the number one guy. NASCAR is now a publicly traded company. It was a family owned. The France family had it. Now it's part of International Speedway Corporation. It's gotten to be very corporate. It's not controlled by the Frances. So Steve Phelps has been in charge the last 3 or 4 years. Steve calls Bubba and says, hey, we need to talk. And Bubba, there's an interview that was on with Don Lemon yesterday, kind of explaining from Bubba's point of view, and that's where I'm going on a lot of this. So if you check YouTube, Don Lemon and Bubba Wallace, this is there. This is what I'm paraphrasing. Bubba says, Steve Phelps calls me and says, I need to see you right now. And Bubba's like, oh my God, I screwed up. This guy doesn't call me. He's like, I want to come see you. Holy shit, what did I do? And
it's like the superintendent of the school system calling a student.
Yeah. And he's like, I want to come to your trailer. I'm like, oh God, okay. All right. So he shows up and he explains, and he's like, Steve Phelps is almost crying, telling him, like, this is the most emotional. He's like, this has got to be the most emotional this guy's ever been. Because obviously it's racially tinged. They want to treat things right, do the right thing. And he's like, we're going to figure out what happened. We're going to deal with it. So they called in It wasn't just like, hey, because I assumed when they put the release out, oh yeah, NASCAR is going to check the tape. They're going to try to figure it out. Turns out they called the Federal Bureau of Investigation. They called the FBI. They came down. The race got rained out on Sunday, so they wound up all having to stay the night. The FBI comes in and interviews everybody on Monday, and by Tuesday night, there's a release saying, hey, this didn't happen. Or it's not what you guys thought it necessarily was.
Is it true that they don't put cameras in the garage stalls?
That's what I'd seen somebody say that there's not actually cameras in the garage stalls because there's proprietary parts and work being done on the cars. Now, there usually is cameras around the garage area, but usually
security cameras looking out
high
from
up,
outside,
looking down.
Okay.
But like I even thought to myself, because I've never thought about that, and I've spent a lot of time in like a paddock in St. Louis and in Indy and at Mid Ohio, and you don't see cameras anywhere. I think at Indy they're like up on tops of the buildings and are even on a pole, and they're looking down for like camera shots. Here's Gasoline Alley, but showing the entirety of Gasoline Alley.
You see all three garages in one shot.
Yeah, it's a big wide shot. They're not putting individual cameras on, because for a lot of these tracks, they're only occupied for like maybe a week or two a year total, 3 or 4 days at a time. In this case, it was a 1-day show. So one thing that struck me about the FBI, their statement, is the wording. It said that they discovered that the piece of rope fashioned as a noose had been there since the fall of 2019. They put fashioned like a noose in their statement.
So
it's not like it was just a piece of rope hanging from the garage door.
The pictures are out there. I shared from my Facebook page, Bob Popgrass, Indiana University graduate. He posted a picture from last year that he had on his own cell phone of, hey, here's what they found. Because after the FBI announced their findings, everybody in the media went back and looked at, hey, I know what to look for now. And they found it. And it was the rope that you would use to lift and lower the garage door. That's what it had been fashioned onto. The year before, in October, when the photos were taken, that garage belonged to a different team. It was the Wood Brothers racing team. Paul Menard of, that Menard's grocery store. It was his car, or grocery store. You can buy your groceries there. You can buy your lumber there. You can buy your plumbing supplies there. Everything's at Menard's. He was in the Menard's Ford, and they used that garage there. So every year you show up and they say, hey, you guys are going to be in stall number 4 this year. You guys are going to be in stall number 15, whatever it is. I'm sure it's probably based on points, where the team is in points at that week, and that's where they end up there. The FBI did use the term noose. They didn't say, hey, it wasn't a noose, but they also said there is absolutely no way that anybody could have known that Bubba Wallace would be in this thing this year.
That was coincidence.
That's just what happened. Yeah. That said, somebody, there's been some backlash because Bubba has said, hey, I don't care who it is or what it is. It was still a noose, and it was there. So it's a problem. And I don't know, I'm asking 4 white guys to answer, the symbolism of a noose. That's one that I'm not comfortable to say is necessarily racist, but it's probably still a problem. In his opinion, it's a problem, so therefore it probably is a problem.
I think it is a racist symbol because of the history of it with the Ku Klux Klan and lynchings and things of that nature. But the backlash against him it's sort of like the people that didn't want to believe it anyway, and don't, just people that would operate from bad faith anyway about Black Lives Matter or anything revolving around this topic. People that deny that there's white privilege, or people that just deny that there's even a race problem in America. It's all of us people talking about it. That's what's causing the problem. We just shut up, like as Laura Ingraham told LeBron James, shut up and dribble.
Yeah.
If all these people would shut up and dribble and just entertain us, then we wouldn't have a problem, right? It's just such it's that sort of mindset, that sort of Fox News mentality that of these people that are backlashing against Bubba Wallace for just going off the information that he was given. Like he's taking in this information, he's processing it as an African American man down in the South.
Who's all of a sudden became a spokesman of this.
Who's very familiar
He's from
with
Alabama.
Noose.
He's not from New Hampshire originally.
He knows what a noose means.
Yeah.
Like it's not, this isn't a foreign image.
And it is like a bizarre, like I tried to read up and see people's responses because some of the responses was when it actually got worse. And one guy's like, I don't even understand that as a mechanic. He's like, why would you tie that as your knot? Because every time you open or close the door, it's going to crush your hand. It's going to
tighten down on you.
He's like, why would you want, that's the worst knot. I've never in 35 years seen somebody use a noose as their knot to pull their garage door up and down. So it's just kind of a weird thing. And maybe it's some people are that oblivious, but yeah, I would think that in that kind of sport, in that area, when you're trying to fight that perception of this Southern good old boys, they might not occur to people, but that was
maybe it's just the way that knots have been taught in that family for generation after generation after generation.
It's some guy that he knows one good knot for a garage door pull, and it's a noose, and he's just like, and so it might be harmless, but you don't know.
The rope wraps around the top of the loop. Maybe they just fit your hand nicely to grab onto.
So here's the other thing that in this story and the way it was reported, NASCAR never gave a picture of it and saying, hey, here's the thing.
Yeah.
They never showed exactly where it was. It was just in his garage area. You didn't know if it was hung from a rafter above the car. You didn't know if it was something laid on the car. Ultimately, it turned out to be the garage door pull.
It was very reactionary because of the events that led up to it.
Because everybody was on absolute alert over the last 3 weeks.
If it had been a normal time, I mean,
probably nobody would have even noticed it.
Either they wouldn't have noticed it, or maybe a team member would have said something and been like, "There's a noose hanging in the garage," and someone would have been like, they would have just came and looked at it and been like, "Oh, wait, well, so that's the account." I don't think that's a noose, but I also heard that was the only door that had that knot hanging on it.
Think about the bizarreness of that being the situation where there's one noose knot on a garage door in the whole facility, and your one black driver gets that garage.
The story we got is that a mechanic from the Wood Brothers team was like, son of a bitch. I remember that being there last year. Right. I remember that we had that weird ass knot in our thing last October. And then that's when these people started looking at these pictures going, yeah. And then you looked at Twitter, and last night there were pictures before the FBI report came out. Somebody had figured it out, and you started to see multiple photographs of this knot when there was a Truck Series race there, when the 21 car was in front of it last October, and then here's the.
It's for sure a noose.
The 43 was in that lot.
Definitely is a noose. It's tiny, like the size. It's like a noose fit for
your wrist, maybe.
Your wrist. I was going to say a raccoon. But yeah, so maybe the brothers that were there were just trying to do some trapping, get some pelts to sell after the race, up in the haulers.
So
down in the haulers.
My frustration after this is over is what Zach started to touch on before, is that backlash back at Bubba over this, and people trying to make it a punching bag.
And they're still today, like people are still digging in.
The memes are coming harder and harder.
This is not a Juicy Smoulet situation.
And that was not. So Zach and I had this conversation in advance going, I don't know what's happening here. I want to know more. This sounds horrific.
Yeah.
And it was a real demonstration of how no matter what happens, there's a hell of a lot of people in the audience and out in the world that say, I'm going to pick my corner, and here I don't have all the information, but I'm going to dig in hard.
Mm-hmm. And when the results came out, I was like, this is the most ideal result for this to be. It was not somebody targeting him on that weekend. It wasn't it planted by somebody looking for me. I was like, you can hope that this is at best or worst like a really unfortunate coincidence. And then if you want to get down to somebody really needs to learn a different knot for when they're working in a garage stall, you could deal with that. But at least it wasn't like a targeted thing for that weekend, because the other thing was people were thinking about it because of the COVID thing. The only people in the paddock area
there were no fans.
There were no fans. It was just
you're credentialed
people. And so, and they even point out like they had actually a perfect display the next day before they came out with the investigation results. They all push his car out to the grid. All the drivers are behind him. All the crews are behind him. And you have to, everybody's thinking to yourself, well, if it really somebody did do this, they're walking behind him now acting like they support him. You know, like, so that didn't turn into an issue. So like, if anything, it kind of turned into, they jumped the gun a little bit in releasing it to the press, and maybe could have waited a day. But they're trying to be transparent and not be.
They don't want to be accused of covering it up.
So they're in, you know,
NASCAR found a noose in the black guy's deal and covered it up and hid it from you. Because that would probably not go over very well with their bajillion dollars in sponsors.
Yeah, probably not. So before we get into anything else, Jeremiah, do me a favor really quick and get Google up again.
Yep, I'm here to Google things for you since Guffey's not here.
I want you to look up Nathan Bedford Nashville statue.
I don't want to look up Nathan Bedford. Nathan Bedford Forrest?
No.
That's the only Confederate statue that should be allowed to stay up, and you'll see why.
Yeah, it's in Nashville, Tennessee. Nathan Bedford.
Nathan Bedford Forrest.
He was he was a Confederate general. There's a bronze and silver statue that is on private ground right off of Interstate 65, just outside of Nashville.
It disproves white supremacy. If anyone asserts white supremacy, just show them the statue, and they're
his face, his eyeballs go in different directions.
Amazing.
His neck is
it's almost as good as
for an 8-foot tall man.
It's almost as good as the Ronaldo bust probably about 5 or 10 years ago. I don't know if you guys remember that one.
I don't think I do.
You'll have to Google that one too.
We're
going to play the Google game.
Oh, did it get vandalized?
I think it's been pinked.
Oh, somebody splattered it with pink paint.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
It looks, from the image, it looks like his tongue is out in one or two of them, but it's not really.
It's surrounded by.
You'll have to put that up against the Ronaldo.
Kind of looks like Dan Cummins, doesn't it?
In the world, it's like it looks like a nutcracker. It's like a nutcracker's jaw, like the mouth.
Yeah, but there's a full statue. Gigantic horse, little tiny.
It looks like it's based off of a character from like Team America, World Police, or something like that. Like it looks like
it's perfect.
It's like it's a bizarre character out of like Mr. Rogers' like little neighborhood. Like
it looks like the Misfit Toys. It would have fit in the land of Misfit Toys.
I think that Confederate statue is on private property.
The Nathan Bedford Forrest. Oh, it's new. 1998. This is modern art. This is not like
somebody got paid to do that.
Yeah.
Jack Kershaw. Is Jack Kershaw still with us?
Does it say how much that was commissioned for?
I would love to know.
We're efforting. We're learning. We're learning now.
Location and dedication.
Oh boy.
Here we go.
Oh boy. Kershaw defended the statue by saying somebody needs to say a good word for slavery. That is not a quote that
hey guys, why are we defending slavery anymore?
That
come on, it's 1996.
That quote does not age well.
This is 1998. Is that what you said? He was born in 1913.
Born in 1913. He died in Nashville at the age of 96.
That's why it's such a horrible statue. It was made by an old racist. He could probably barely see. His hands are shaking.
And it disproves white supremacy.
It does.
Wow.
It's a hilarious statue.
It's a top 5 for sure. As far as hilarious,
it is on private land.
You could slap a different name on it, throw it in a theme park, and it would just fit in a theme park.
He'll go to Dollywood at some point.
Yeah.
He also did a Joan of
Dolly
Arc.
Parton probably wouldn't even take it.
I don't know.
Hasn't she been donating a bunch of money to Black Lives Matter causes and things?
I think Dolly follows wherever the money goes.
In late December, those are fighting.
Well, there was a joking push to have her statue replace all of the statues that were coming down. Just replace them all with Dolly Parton statues.
it was vandalized with Pink Paint in 2017. Wow,
2017. Huh. Yeah. It's a funny. It is surrounded by Confederate flags, though. Different Confederate flags.
Protesters tried to pull it down once by tying it to a train. It's protected by a gate now.
That'll do the trick. No rope can get through this gate.
The city of Nashville tried to cover it up with some plants, and the DOT said, "No, you can't do that."
Whose private property is it on?
I have no idea.
I remember the story now of
some
it
guy named Bill
by,
Doris owns it.
I remember the story now of it getting covered by pink paint, and I remember the dude doing a television interview that owns the statue saying that someone thought that it needed a paint job, and he thought it looked fantastic. And he's got like a Jeff Sessions Southern gentleman accent.
Owned by Nashville businessman Bill Doris.
He's a businessman. I'm in the oil business.
Oh, boy.
Country music business.
Yeah, he's probably some record executive out of Nashville.
So, yeah, back to the Bubba Wallace thing. I have been, I guess I wanted to talk higher level about how this has been handled by folks. And I think, Zach, you're right about how NASCAR has handled it. I've been disappointed with folks and the response that they've had to it, just essentially running out and blaming him and the memes.
Even when you lay out for them, he didn't know about it. It was reported
to
him by NASCAR. And they're like, it doesn't matter to me.
Yeah, he doesn't know a tire iron from a burning cross. Is the meme you're getting.
You're already dealing with people who are acting in bad faith who don't want to engage in you in a reasonable, rational discussion anyway. So it's sort of like those people are just kind of off anyway. Like they're the same people that are going to deny racism's an issue in America, probably most likely. And so they don't want to see it.
Kate Coger posted some stuff about it, and when the news broke about it, and I did the same thing. I posted when the results were out. I'm like, okay, this is about as good as we could hope for what was the result of. But people were screaming back to Kate's post, and they'll just start going off about, this is all fake, and it's like, this is, but one person in one of the discussions had said, all this racist stuff doesn't actually happen. As you guys are talking about 10 years ago, I didn't know any of this was happening. And I was like, I guess, and maybe there are people that just don't leave Henry County and they're not interacting with other people. I don't know how anybody could say none of this is happening until people told me about it. Like literally just finger in their ears. If I don't hear it, I don't see it.
We're in a bubble.
Yeah.
There is a real bubble. It's not as easy to be in the bubble in the world of connectivity, but I think we are all probably more connected than the average individual is. And we also, I've seen from a congressional candidate today that there are people that will only listen to folks in their echo chamber. So if you don't think like I do, block, unsubscribe, not going to hear from you anymore. And then it just continues to feed and it gets louder. You get a feedback loop and it gets louder.
Okay. So you make the point that that's putting yourself in an echo chamber. But I mean, at the same time, having all kinds of craziness constantly coming through your news feed every day, that's not healthy for you either. So, I mean, maybe you're creating an echo chamber by just having your friends and family and people that think like you, but you're also not getting bogged down with all the noise from everyone who, especially a congressional candidate, that because they're in the media a lot, they're seeing a lot of things, they're probably going to be getting a lot of messages from people that just disagree with them from the get-go. So, I don't know. That's a weird line
I've had people that are very reasonable. And if I've ever had a disagreement with, like Cade and I don't agree a lot, but Cade's great to have a discussion with. And the people I have a lot of respect for these people, and I trust them to be fairly reasonable. And then everybody has found a topic in all the situations that these people have dug in and are not only they don't want to hear another side of it. They are actively telling you, if you have a difference of opinion with me on this topic, unfriend me.
Yeah, that's where it's a little
stuff
weird.
That there's obviously, and I'm just because sometimes I'm not sure about my perspective on something. I'm not sure if I'm seeing this all. And I can't, some of those topics, it's hard to find somebody on the other side to say, can we talk this out so I can see what your side is and maybe I can understand it. It's hard to find somebody who's willing to even say, to go in to have that kind of discussion with on some of these topics. And there's so much going on that there's at least one or two topics like that.
Well, the problem with that we are in today with social media and the clickbait media that we have is that people have hardcore beliefs that they believe are 100% true, but you ask them to explain it, expound on their beliefs, they don't really know half the time. It's just because that's just what they see on their Facebook feed a lot.
Right.
It's not something that they took the time to read about it and to go, this is the opinion that I'm formulating on this. Or I had this same opinion a few years back whenever a similar situation arose, and that's the opinion I'm going to have today. It's not even that. It's just this is what I'm seeing memes all over Facebook.
The memes.
Yes, all kinds of memes.
We're in a meme economy now.
Yeah, and I'm seeing all this clickbait that is generated by the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal, places that used to be institutions of real journalism that now make clickbait articles. Then you can't even read the article because you have to get through their paywall. So the only information you get is from their clickbait headline.
From the headline.
And that's even if somebody reads the article. Because I know a perfect example, and I commented this. I was like, this is a perfect example of what's wrong with this country right now. There was an article, and I think it was like WTHR or Wish TV, which you can read those articles. And it was about the Knightstown Police Department situation where they had almost all their officers resign. And like 80% of the comments were, well, I'd resign too with all the stuff going on with police officers today. I was like, you guys, this is what's wrong. This has nothing to do with that. I was like, this is, if you followed anything or read the article, you know that they're not happy with the way their department's being handled by local officials. It has nothing to do with their interaction with the general public.
Doesn't fit the narrative.
It doesn't fit. It's nothing to do with
this is just a place for me to type my words.
Post my memes. Post my memes.
Knightstown is an Indiana town with 2,000 people.
Why did they need a police department? Why can't they do the spice? Why can't they follow God Emperor Darren Jacobs and just hire a town marshal and move on?
They had 7 police officers resign, and I was shocked to find out that they had 7 police officers. For 2,000, it seems like an extreme amount for I mean, everyone in this room has been in Knightstown. I've been
pulled over in Knightstown.
Oh my!
I'm in the club.
How do you even manage?
Yeah, you must have been doing something right.
Well, yes, I was.
You have to call
I was
Sean
accelerating. I was accelerating, leaving town. It's not 55 in front of the livestock auction. I'll tell you that.
You're not coasting.
So, back to the Bubba Wallace thing. He caught some flack, and I think it was for being extremely positive. Before the FBI results were out, he got out of the car and he spoke to the media at Talladega. And he said, I'm sorry, I'm not wearing my mask. I just wanted to show whoever it was that you're not going to take away my smile. I'm going to keep on going. I don't know how you can reply any better to this than that. If you, at that moment, when you think that somebody has given you a death threat or you don't know what happened, because I missed it in the Steve Phelps thing, but when he was saying that when he started to hear the hey, there's been a hate crime potentially against you, your family or whatever, he's worried about his parents. He's worried about people at home. He's not worried about him there at the track. He's worried about his family life. So he's had all of these emotions that's going through. And instead of responding with anger or hate, he said, I'm going to smile and y'all are going to look at me smile. I'm going to carry on. I think it's fantastic the way he responded. By the way, he led the Talladega race too, which is
he was
cool.
in the picture at the end.
He was right there.
Which at Talladega is a struggle. He wasn't upside down flipping like some of the other people at the end of the race. He had to be in the picture at the end of that race. It takes brains. That's a chess match, 200 miles an hour. But
it's it was a strange story from the very beginning because we have NASCAR banning the flag. We have a guy protesting by renting a plane and flying a giant Confederate flag over the track. People selling flags at booths that were saying they had record sales. And then all of a sudden you have Bubba Wallace coming out with the Black Lives Matter. Did he have it on the car?
Oh, he ran a livery on the car
the week before. At Martinsville, or NASCAR's been running 2 weeks.
But
they're running two races.
He put it on his car prior to Talladega.
I have a secret about race car drivers. They don't get to decide what goes on the car. The team tells that somebody has paid for the car, or in their case, I think they're underfunded, so the team has some discretion as to what they're going to run on the car. But the team made the decision. Richard Petty's team made the decision, which really isn't Richard Petty's team. He's more of a
but I'm sure that he was involved in the conversation. If you're putting, I'm sure.
What
in this day and age is a political message.
I'm absolutely certain it got his blessing.
He wore the T-shirt.
Yes.
And then he starts getting asked about it he was getting asked about it prior to wearing the T-shirt and the car, and which, like we discussed, is why he even started mentioning it. He's wildly uncomfortable the whole time because he's not used to being in the media spotlight like this. And then all of a sudden, the head honcho decides to come to his trailer and tell him that they found a noose hanging in his garage. And holy crap, they send out a press release and everybody's freaking out.
And NASCAR is lifetime ban for whoever did this. Like,
under the circumstances, what's more likely? Was this going to be more likely that some jackass tied a knot the wrong way and it looks weird? Or is it more likely in the South, when this guy comes out for Black Lives Matter and all these things, is it more likely that somebody got in there, hung this up, thought it was funny, thought it was whatever,
or it was a prank of somebody that had no clue
or whatever
of what sort of third rail they were touching?
I mean, the most bizarre, just series of circumstances for that to come together, and you look at it and you're like,
right,
this isn't a leap. This isn't like a huge leap at all for this to have happened.
No. There are 40 cars at Talladega. The 43 car got assigned to the one garage that had that.
Yeah.
It wasn't a huge leap.
Wild coincidence that is absolutely mind-boggling how that happens. But who did you say was in the garage in 2019 that tied it up?
No. I will say that the Wood Brothers team was occupying that garage last year with Paul Menard's car.
They don't know.
They don't know. They said it was there when they got there. So
there are at least pictures back that far of the night. Like, and it was, you saw a couple of pictures, like one with the truck parked in the one of the racing trucks, and one of them with the car. You can see the knot hanging there to the left of the garage door, and so you could, like, okay, it was there, so they could establish that it was there. Mm-hmm. I don't think anybody knows for sure how long it was.
It could have been there for 3 years.
Yeah, you don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's like looking at our Henry County 4-H Fairgrounds, right? Like, it's a space that gets very busy.
Bubba Wallace wasn't in that garage.
No, that's where the FBI said, I have no idea. Honestly, Bubba's been in the Cup Series since 2017. I don't know if his team had that garage in 2018 or 2017. There's 40 cars a weekend. Very doubtful that he would have had it, but I guess it technically is possible that it could have been his garage in 2018.
They run there twice a year.
They would have to check it. Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting question, Dakota. It could be a hate crime from 3 years ago. Yeah, I don't know.
The roulette wheel just struck again. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I was genuinely curious because like, if it was, I don't know how the racing world works. If it was something like, oh, they know every time that the racers come, they're in the same stall every year.
No, usually they'll line them up based on points for that stuff. I know like the 500 is a little different, but like for NASCAR, they line them up based on points. So there might be a thing to keep teams together, but I don't even think that that's necessarily the case sometimes.
And that team is a single car entry, right? So it's going to go.
Somebody has that information. Somebody they had to have been able to look back.
Oh yeah, I'm sure that somebody has a spreadsheet and a chart, and the media would be able to go back and look at
usually it'll just lay them out in a row. It would just be like usually like at Indy for NASCAR, first car stall would be whoever's first in the points.
Kevin Harvick,
and just roll them down the line, and then you go back to the next row and go again. So it wouldn't be that hard to figure out. And just go back and look at pictures because that's how everybody else did it. Somebody took a picture of every garage stall because they're a fan of one of the drivers. So you see whose car's in what stall.
Right. And that makes sense. I don't know. It's weird. Whenever I saw the pictures come out, I look at it and I'm like, if I'm on his team, I'd probably say the same thing. Yeah.
You're extremely sensitive to it, and you go, holy
like
hell, really?
Even without the current context, we're in you go to Indy and like see something, say something. If you see something that looks kind of suspect, and you're like, well, that looked suspect. Like that was something that looked like something that needed to be reported because you wonder if I have no doubts he's getting death threats. In the last
for sure.
And he's and I actually messaged. I have a friend that lives down in the NASCAR down in North Carolina. And I said, I hope that NASCAR's got his back because what he's dealing with right now, I can't even comprehend.
Like, what's amazing is that they rallied around him immediately. And it is because of all these factors that are going on. Whereas the NFL, which is you have a lot more African-American players, you have the Kaepernick thing come around and then, we don't want to kneel and we don't want to upset people.
The NFL gets money 4 years ago. They get money
from the military, from different
because of the national anthem and bringing the flag out on the field.
But an interesting counterfactual would be: what if Kaepernick started kneeling today? in this climate,
I think
what would happen?
I think it would be a completely different opinion.
I think so too.
I was thinking about that the other day. I'm like 99
from the league. I think these reactionary
from the
a-holes that
the
are
NFL,
on the internet
the NFL
memeing
would
about
be an absolute front running. I agree. Let's see what we can do. The question is, and our mutual friend Marshall Pruitt has talked about this for weeks. It's, hey, what are you doing more than just doing something on your phone, though? Yeah. What's the NFL going to do? Yeah. What is NASCAR going to do? What are these athletes going to do to actually affect change, right? Kaepernick tried to do that.
Yeah.
And he essentially became a martyr for his cause, getting himself blackballed out of the NFL to the point now where he's so rusty and out of work.
He'll never play again. Back. I mean, he'll never play again, but at the same time, he's got enough. He's not going to go hungry anytime soon.
No, he's got his Nike money from 5 years ago.
He's got things worked out. But at the same time, I mean, what if, it's interesting counterfactual, because I think the same people that are reacting to Bubba Wallace, the backlash against him, would be the same. They'd be saying the same thing about Kaepernick now. I just think that the league would have gotten behind him, and maybe more people would have gotten behind him if the league would have legitimized that, rather than the sort of hand wringing, well, the anthem and, oh, I don't know, but the commercial people that give us all their sponsorships.
Back to the money, dude.
It does, but it doesn't, though.
And that's
what I mean.
Is NASCAR losing money on Bubba Wallace right now, or are more people interested?
So NASCAR. This is the unique thing about the motorsports world, is that it's incredibly interested in individual performance and the success of the teams. NASCAR doesn't own the 43 car. NASCAR is a sanctioning body.
Right.
It's not like, Jim Irsay owns 1/32 of the NFL. So he supervises the commissioner. NASCAR, that 43 car is owned by, I want to get it right now, Richard Petty Motorsports. It's not owned by the series.
Right.
The 43 team has to make the grid. So they have a driver that can get the sponsorship so that team can exist and they can make payroll, so that they can get their part of the prize money that NASCAR offers as a promoter. There's an entry blank for racing, and your goal is to be the most successful you can as an individual, as a team, and the results show themselves. It's very unique from other sports where you have to perform. Sure. You're only in that seat because you either bring a check, like happens in some forms of motorsports, where you allow that team to exist, or you are competent enough and good enough to be on the grid and to do well. I think Bubba finished 11th,
whereas
13th or 14th.
The NFL is representation for the players, right?
Yeah, they have a union. They have the NFL makes the decisions as far as policy.
Maybe it's an apples and oranges comparison, but I think that NASCAR has supported Bubba Wallace immediately. And
True.
I think that's something.
The community came together.
That's a huge change in a positive way. Whereas the NFL, again, with the Black Lives Matter stuff and the hand wringing, it's just, we've got all these white fans, but we have all these black players, and how do we?
Right.
And they're so worried about all this corporate crap that it's not.
I think it just goes back to the George Floyd case, because it was it was eye opening for a lot of people, because every other time that there's been an unarmed black man killed by a police officer, it has been one police officer, with the exception of Eric Garner. It's been one police officer, one unarmed man, and the thing we always hear is, well, it's just one bad apple spoils the bunch.
Right.
But whenever we see George Floyd get murdered by a guy, we watched as 3 other police officers stood around and just let a guy do it,
and 2 held him down,
and 2 held him, and he was handcuffed.
Yeah.
And one of them is making jokes and saying to the camera, "This is why you don't do drugs, kids." And the whole time that's while a man is being murdered right in front of him.
Yeah.
So then you go, okay, is this a rotten apple or is this a rotten orchard?
Yeah.
What do we got going on here? So I think that it was an eye-opening experience for a lot of people, that maybe they were sitting on the fence whenever Kaepernick was doing his thing, and they were going, I don't know, because you had a lot of conflicting media stories that were coming out prior, and then this one was just so blatant and so egregious that right after it happened, I saw no person excusing what the police did. There was not a single person
which
that
is amazing
was making
because,
an excuse.
Nevertheless, in any event, somebody's going to support law enforcement. But I agree with you. I haven't seen anybody support Derek Chauvin with the way he murdered George Floyd.
Right.
And then you've got other the unrest, and then Breonna Taylor and all these other people that there is. It's a different feel because I think it's because of the COVID, and we've all been kind of cooped up in our houses, and when something's got to change, and then you have this match that just lights off the tinderbox, and it's an explosion.
There's such a distrust for everything that comes from government right now because of coronavirus too. Because,
but those aren't the people that are out marching, though.
No, what?
It's a different type of.
I don't know.
There's a distrust of like Anthony Fauci by the MAGA Q people.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying.
That's separate type of distrust.
The MAGA Q people are the ones that would have been rushing to the defense of the police officer in the past, and now there's such a disdain for everything that the government has put out.
Everything that's not Trump.
Yeah. So it's just gone.
If it's Trump, then they accept it still. But if it's not Trump, no.
So,
even though Trump has appointed all these people to be in charge of the COVID-19 response and all those things.
So I don't know. I just think that this one stung a little bit differently. And I think that messaging on that behalf of the Black Lives Matter protesters was more on point, more coherent and clear this time around. Any interview that you saw with organizers of the protests, they were every one of them was concise, and they were competent and able to speak clearly about what their beliefs were. And then because of that, the average American went, "Oh, these beliefs aren't radical. They're not the cultural Marxists that we thought them to be. They're Black Lives Matter literally just means pay attention to this real issue that's happening in the community," which wasn't the case before. I don't know if anybody else saw this, but there was last year, a couple years ago, one of the founders of Black Lives Matter was in a video saying that she was trained in Marxism, whatever that means. I don't know how you get trained in Marxism.
You read Capital and you read Communist Manifesto, and I'm trained, baby.
Mm-hmm. So they were saying that discredited the movement for a minute.
Somebody being a founder or in charge of Black Lives Matter is like saying you founded the Tea Party. It's
right. It's like what that means is that you are just reaching out to media and saying I founded Black Lives Matter. That's all that means.
They're movements. They're not organizations. It's not like you can call up the president of Black Lives Matter, right? And if you are calling up the president of Black Lives Matter, it's because he's the guy that bought the website. Like it's not. It's a movement.
The real reactionary MAGA people kind of treat them as if they are the Bolsheviks, and this is like 1917. It's absolutely not the case. It's a movement.
Much more like 1968.
It's like there are a lot of 68 vibes, except
we've been saying that on the show that we feel like we've been living.
Except that. Like Trump is I feel like is starting to lose grip of reality. And I think he's starting to he's always lost grip of reality, but right now especially he's starting to you just see him come off of that plane after that rally that was like half full.
Very disheveled.
And he looked like dog crap. And he was just he was defeated. Almost. And that was really interesting to see.
What I really think we're seeing with Trump right now is the effects of the presidency are actually starting to impact him.
And I don't think he wants to be president anymore.
Because,
no, but he doesn't want to be a loser.
He doesn't want to be a loser, but he doesn't actually want to do the work.
He doesn't want to be a loser or a quitter, but oh man.
It's always been the weird thing with Trump because every single other president prior to him, whenever they got into office and then a side-by-side photo of a few years later, they looked like they'd aged 20 years.
Right.
Trump, not the case. He would never look any different. It's all
the Diet Coke and the McDonald's chemicals that preserve his body.
And the European Sudafed.
It's a Sudafed.
He is getting like 2 decades worth of unrest and like just like so much.
Could you imagine? Could you imagine
just
being the president of a nation right now? I mean, just right straight now, up, like
in 2020, just in not even for like 4 years. 6 months so far.
Just since 6 February.
Months. Yeah, this 6 months. But this has been the eventful 6 months of his presidency. Every thing that's happened before this, he stepped in it, or it's of his own making. So every problem that he ever faced was either something he did himself, or just something he said, or whatever. He didn't have to face an economic meltdown, a global pandemic, and absolute unrest throughout the country over racism.
And most presidents are lucky if they get one of those things during a presidency.
And you just get hit with it all three at the same time. Yeah, he doesn't want to do this job.
And then you go, well, I guess I'm going to have a rally. Like,
go be a super spreader of COVID-19.
Someone on his campaign team says, Mr. President, we need to do a rally. We'll go to Tulsa, Oklahoma, where they're letting.
No, that's the thing. He said, I want to get out of here. I want to be in front of the people. Absolutely. Like he was. You could see in those press conferences, he was caged up.
He's one of those
ready
guys
to go. He gets his energy off of them.
Yeah, he feeds off of people.
He doesn't get his energy off of Anthony Fauci saying, yeah, we're probably going to have another spike in the fall.
Maybe we won't have the NFL this year.
Yeah. I mean, he did, that is just a total bummer level. Now, if he can drink a glass of water one-handed and throw it around on a stage, that's where he gets his energy.
He talked about that at the Tulsa.
He did
rally.
it. Yeah,
in front of 6,200
water and threw it. What a great job!
But
amazing.
He's like,
he's running a marathon. Zach, that's your move, isn't it?
Yeah. He's like, so I take a drink with this water, and I put my hand under it because I don't want to spill any. He's like, you ruin a silk tie.
Hilarious.
And then, I mean, which is true, objectively speaking. And then he's like, and all of a sudden, I have a new disease. I thought it was a good joke. Yeah. Like if I heard a comedian tell that joke, it'd be pretty funny.
Well,
my favorite
it's just
thing
weird.
It's
the president.
For every one of these situations, there's a 3 or 4 year old Trump tweet that absolutely ages.
Yes,
like
perfectly.
Yeah,
fine
wine.
Yeah.
Sean, if you are watching or listening, Sean is tagged in this. Sean is the curator of the old Trump tweets.
Yes, he is. Yes.
So just follow Sean, and he will.
I bring the just the finest tweets. I'm a curator of the internet, more or less. I do share some of my original thoughts occasionally, but just there's always something. Twitter has probably broken my brain at this point, which is not good.
That's in my final thoughts. Is actually a little Twitter related thing I've tried after last week when Chase was talking about his love for Twitter. I've tried to reapply myself and gotten back into it a little bit. Twitter's pretty much for sports. So without sports happening, Twitter, I just kind of fall away from, but we'll get there. So let's try to circle back and enter final thoughts. We generally work from right to left in the room, which means Sean is on the point first. Did you get everything off your chest in this thing that you wanted to? Is this the conversation you expected?
I think so, yeah. I think we had a good conversation. Everybody, I mean, I think the 4 of us are all on the same page. I just hope I didn't upset anyone and cause you to lose listeners or insulting Fox News and Donald Trump, things like that I do. But
okay, we promise to be thought-provoking and yada, 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 make you grow as a person.
Yeah. That's
our job. That's what you sign up for. We warned you in the beginning.
It's such a unique time in history, and people say, may you live in interesting times. And sometimes I wish that wasn't the case in 2020, but we're just in the beginning of this, and I don't even know where it's going to go. And I don't know what's going to happen in the presidential election. I don't think anybody can tell you what's going to happen in November. So you just got to literally anything can happen, which is very exciting on one hand. But are
we going to have an election?
I think we'd have to. I think Trump. That's one thing Trump won't do. We'll see. But again, this is meaningless telling you this in June when it's not even. We're not even to November yet.
What if we just let the House of Representatives pick the new president?
We have no idea. Who knows what's going to happen? Maybe Trump's golf caddy will be the next president. I don't know. I mean, it's just we're at the beginning of this. We're not at the end, which is very demoralizing in a lot of ways. It's very exhausting in a lot of ways. But to see the positive change is something people should focus on. And I think Mr. Wallace here and so many other people that are making positive changes in society, trying to get people to think differently. I think that's what we need right now, and it's a long haul. The racism problem didn't start overnight. It's not going to be finished overnight. We're talking centuries of systemic racism that we're just now trying to address. 50 years after desegregation?
Yeah,
something like that. So
there are people alive right now that could not use the same water fountain.
Right. I think that one of the first students that was able to go to desegregated school just turned 70 or something like that.
65. Was it Ruby
65.
Bridges?
65, yes.
Yeah, she's insane. 65. And I think I saw a thing that until 1965, African American women couldn't vote. Yeah. They didn't get that right until the 60s. I think people like to think, oh, this stuff's like, this isn't my problem. Like, it's a lot. Yeah. All this stuff's a lot more recent than you think.
Whenever I got to thinking about this, I made up a timeline. I put it on my Facebook profile, and I didn't include anything that was biased or my own opinion. Just the history of like how we got to where we are.
Now, I read through that timeline, and there's stuff in there that people don't understand or think had happened, and your brain couldn't tell you that some of that stuff happened, but it did, and people need to think about it when they think that, well, it's been this many years, it's been 100. No, there's been stuff that's been going on.
Right. Well, they've been free for forever. Well, they've been free since the Civil War, since 1865. But have they, though?
Yeah.
Really. And then you get into, after desegregation, you get into redlining in inner cities. You get into...
It's systemic. It's a whole system. It's not just you're slaves and then you weren't. It's all these things of economic, property issues.
Now, if it had been...
Civil rights issues.
If it went somehow miraculously, Abraham Lincoln said, no slaves anymore. And then we went, oh, okay. So they're equal, and everyone's perfectly fine, and they can, and a black man can do everything that a white man can do. Yeah. Then maybe by now we would be okay, but that's not what happened, because for another 100 years they were spat upon as second-class citizens, and then for decades after desegregation, we segregated them into inner cities. And then broke those neighborhoods down by the CIA running crack cocaine into them in the 80s. And in the 70s, the CIA performing which still happened until 1994. The CIA had Operation Chaos that was still going on in black inner cities, where they would set up brothels in the inner cities and they would dose men with illicit drugs and then study them as they were on the drugs and had sexual relations with women. That happened. And that was happening in the 90s.
Yeah.
So that there's not been an equal...
The 1993 crime omnibus bill, which Joe Biden gleefully passed, absolutely had an effect.
Right. Now you sound like you're on the Trump team.
Now I'm team... Well... Just the other guy's not that great. Having a binary choice is that great.
Joe Biden is the author.
That's stuff that you guys appreciate.
I'm voting for the other Joe Jorgensen.
I'm with Joe.
I'm on Joe's team. No E.
I am all about. I believe my beliefs are what this country was founded on. That every man was created equally and is endowed in unalienable rights, and that's it. That's what was written in the Declaration of Independence, and that is what should have been happening from the beginning. And it ensures an equal opportunity for all people. And for hundreds of years now, Black Americans have not been afforded an equal opportunity. And where we need to work as a society is not ensuring equity and equal outcomes. We just need to make sure that everyone is at least getting a fair shake at things. That's it. That's all we need to do.
All right. For Sean, if anybody needs to contact you because they ran afoul, how do they hit up the law offices of Gallion?
You can find me at Gallion and Rao Law Office, LLP, 595 New York Avenue, Newcastle, Indiana, 47362.
You're potent anywhere in Indiana.
My number is 765-529-3787. I'm happy to help with any criminal defense issues, family law. My partner does a lot of estate work, wills, things like that. So we do just about everything.
You can cover it all.
We can do just about everything.
All right. Zachary Burcham. It occurred to me as we're sitting here, and I sent you the lyrics of a Tim Wilson song.
Yeah, little Timmy Wilson. I told you, I was like, look, I was like, oh, I know what that song is. Okay, yeah, I can hear that song in my head.
So Tim Wilson sang a song. It's called the NASCAR song, and it started out, she named me Dale, Darrell, Waltrip, Richard Petty, Awesome, Bill, Irvin, Gordon, Earnhardt, Smith, Johnson, Jr. I thought about those lyrics, and I said, my God, Bubba Wallace was born to be a NASCAR driver because his name is Darrell Wallace Jr. They named him Bubba. So he's literally, the names in the song are him, right? Like he's born to be a NASCAR driver. So I'm glad he's got a shot, and hopefully he has some success here. What do you think, Zach?
I don't know. I'll pump L&K for Cade. Get on the list now because I feel like they're almost backed up to like December or something like that to get beef from him, I think. But just this whole time's going to be uncomfortable for people, and if you go through the whole thing and you feel super comfortable at everything, you're probably not like listening enough. Because I've tried to find people so I can understand stuff that's going on. So just be comfortable with being uncomfortable and try to see both sides of some of the arguments. But if somebody can come up with a good justification for the Confederate flag, I'd love to hear it because I still haven't heard it yet. But
yeah, me too.
If
you send it to Zach, send it to me.
But I will correct because somebody gave me false information about African American women being able to vote for longer than that. But some of that stuff. The point is that when it comes to history, as Dakota was saying, some of that stuff, look into what's been going on. And when somebody describes systemic racism as racism that happens without anybody having to do anything. Mm-hmm. You don't have to have a racist to get systemic racism. It just happens. So just try and be understanding and listen to people. And, nobody really owes you answers necessarily, but try and keep your eyes open and your ears open. And maybe you'll learn something and you'll be a little more knowledgeable about the world.
I did pick up my L&K beef box this weekend.
I just picked up one for a friend
on North Memorial Drive here in Newcastle, and they had a whole lot of ground beef available. So you can still get ground beef and some other products. So if you just walk in, they have a handful of items. I think the beef boxes they want to put a little.
Sometimes
bit extra.
They'll post up on their website what they got available, and I think the donut sales open up this weekend.
Donuts and some of the produce sales. D squared.
I don't have a whole lot of final thoughts. I had a really interesting.
Oh, good, 'cause I have a bunch.
I had a really interesting story in the Patreon portion, and I feel like a lot of people need to hear that. So if it's pretty crazy. We get into some real details. It is the most vulnerable time of my entire life, and that's all I'm going to say about it.
There were some very adult words.
Yep, you have to join the Patreon to hear about it. But yeah,
it won't happen again because you got rid of your Buick, so you'll go back to the normal physicals.
Yeah,
because you had the Buick, so you got the Buick consistent.
That's right. Yeah. No more senior citizen.
You're back on the solid food plan. You don't have to drink applesauce because you drive the Buick. Oh my gosh! All right, I wanted to blame the Indianapolis Star for a minute. I think they've gotten rid of a whole lot of people, and I don't know what moron is running their Twitter page. But the Indy Star, since this has been the motorsports episode, I'm gonna wrap back to this. Next weekend, the city of Indianapolis is hosting NASCAR and IndyCar for the very first time. We have a unified motorsports world where the two biggest series, American series, are going to be racing together at the same racetrack over the same weekend. Saturday, the IndyCar is going to be running the Grand Prix on the infield road course. The AAA team that we talked about, the Xfinity, is going to run the same road course on Saturday, and then the Cup cars are going to run on Sunday. Unfortunately, because of COVID, no fans, but what are we going to do? So the Indy Star, in their sports Twitter page on June 22nd, Monday? Is that Monday? They said, "Attention motorsports fans, we want to hear from you. Ahead of the historic IndyCar and NASCAR doubleheader, July 4th and July 5th, we want to know what you think, which series is better, NASCAR and IndyCar fans, leave a reply below and debate. So they're just completely trying to cause a debate instead of celebrating the unity and supporting motorsports and everything else. They've gone back to the 1996 playbook of 2 racing series, divide them, conquer them, and this is what we're going to do.
There's a lot going. Penske's first race since he bought the track. There's a lot going on besides like let's tear each other apart.
You got to get comments. You got to get people lit up in the comments section.
They got comments.
It's like Mac from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Who versus? Who are we against? Who versus?
I play both sides, so that I always wind up on top.
They got so many replies. It was unreal. It was ugly, and I'm glad for it personally.
Yeah.
I want some more good Mac quotes.
I'll pepper one in every time I'm on here about that.
I'm excited that motorsports is at the top of the sports food chain right now. Racing is an individual sport. It doesn't care if you're a guy, it doesn't care if you're a girl, it doesn't care if you're from the United States or outside of the country, it doesn't care if you're black or white. It's all about who can have the skill to complete the stated distance of the race fastest. That's it. That's all that matters. I think it's a fantastic medium to showcase technology and individual athleticism and skill and strategy, and I'm glad we all got to squeeze one more episode of Boss Hog in on it. I'm confident that everybody's learned a little something today, and hopefully we're all a little more open minded and ready to have conversations and listen to each other. Thank you all very much for joining us today. Dakota's got something. No, who's going to press the button?
I have a Mac quote, and it's COVID-19 related. This is what we'll leave you with. Smoke some cigarettes. It'll smother out the bacteria in your stomach.
Peace. We will see you guys on Tuesday of next week.
Thank you for listening to the Boss Hog of Liberty, which is part of the We Are Libertarians Network. I am Chris Spangle, and I am the founder of this network, and I invite you to listen to all of our shows, which you can find at wearelibertarians.com or by searching for these in your podcatcher. The flagship show is the We Are Libertarians podcast, where we apply libertarian principles to current events. The Brian Nichols Show is a conversation amongst Republicans, Democrats, Libertarians, Independents, as they talk about what is happening in the news. And we have many other podcasts like The Chris Spangle Show, Upward, The Cost, Raw Audio Politics, Miranda's World, and Tad Talk, which is quite a ride. So check all of these out. Go to wearelibertarians.com and you can check out all of our great podcasts. Thanks for listening. Thank you for listening to the We Are Libertarians Network. Get our other shows at wearelibertarians.com.